Hello, hello, my friends. Welcome to Resistance Live. It's ECM, and it's the 20th of November, 2024, in the middle of hell. My humor is returning, my gallows humor, and I hope you're all at least doing what you need to do to cope personally, because I'm just going to tell you this is not pleasant. None of what we're living through right now is particularly pleasant, and we have a ways to go, a long way to go, I suspect, until any of what we're living through from a political standpoint is going to be pleasant again. We have a lot to talk about this morning. As we speak, the House Ethics Committee is getting ready to meet on Matt Gaetz and the report that was planned to be issued had he not resigned from Congress 2 days before it was supposed to be released. And so we're waiting to hear what's going on with that. But we have some new leaked news there from ABC News, which I will talk about, and a whole slew of horrifying, just absolutely newly horrifying cabinet nominations. So I don't know. We're going to laugh about some of that, I expect, because otherwise we'll cry. Okay, for those who don't know me, I'm ECM. I was a federal court trial lawyer for 15 years, specializing in white-collar cases and human rights law. I taught at Columbia Law School. Then I went on to found a leadership and political consulting firm called the Gaia Leadership Project. And I have been here for the last 8 years in various incarnations on various platforms, talking about the intersection of law, politics, and activism. So welcome to Resistance Live for today. I am wearing a black turtleneck sweater today for our visually challenged viewers. My hair is dirty blonde. I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty blonde-haired woman, and I am in front of a oak cabinet and a plant and a stack of books, and I'm coming to you from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. Okay, here's the deal. ABC News didn't leak, but had some new reporting on the Matt Gaetz scandal that broke very late last night, to the effect that the House Ethics Committee heard testimony and received documents of a multitude of Venmo payments between Matt Gaetz and the 17-year-old minor that he is alleged to have raped and her 18-year-old friend, to the tune of $10,000 over the course of about 2 years. And the notes on the Venmo payments are, I don't know, I wouldn't call them, I don't know what I would call them. I wouldn't call them surprising, but I will say that there is, it's very obvious that he didn't think he was going to get caught. Among the most shocking things that came out of this article from ABC News is that he actually cut one of these women a personal check out of his bank account for $750. And in addition to that, it's very clear that some of these payments were for airfare. And that is where we get into federal sex trafficking allegations, because if he flew these girls to New York for sexual purposes, he engaged in violations of federal sex trafficking law. So things are about to get very heated for our current Attorney General nominee. And I will just add that I am certain, based on what we know so far, which I don't think is even close to the whole iceberg on this thing. I think we've just seen the tip of the iceberg, is that he was engaged in some very, very questionable behavior, including these kind of drug-fueled sex parties in Florida involving these two girls. He was witnessed, as we discussed yesterday, having sex with this minor at one of these parties. And there were lots of people in attendance. Word has it that, these were not, this was not a private event. The conduct that he engaged in was not private, that it was actually in public places where anybody who happened to walk by would see it. And that was consistent with what was happening at least two of these parties that he attended, with like dozens of participants. Okay. So we'll have to see what comes of this, but I would be very surprised at this point, given what ABC is reporting, if at some point we will not see the report one way or another. Either it will be leaked, or we will learn the information because the ethics committee votes to publicly release it, which they should. Okay. But I just want to warn you all that it's going to be like fairly ugly. I'm really not expecting that anything, sorry about the hair. I'm really not expecting that anything that we're going to learn is going to be pleasant. And for this and a whole host of reasons, other reasons, like the fact that he's completely unqualified, Matt Gaetz should not be the Attorney General of the United States. I think we can all kind of like agree on that. So there will likely be some additional breaking news on Matt Gaetz related to this report later on today. And of course, we can talk about it. For the person asking in the comments, can he be indicted by the current DOJ? Well, yes. But he was also under investigation by the DOJ. And at least the leaked information we have was that they passed on indicting him because the 17-year-old who we raped was like 17 3/4 at the time that it happened, which doesn't make a difference because the law is the law, right? I mean, he should be indicted anyhow. And plus, federal sex trafficking laws don't depend on someone being underage. That's the other thing, okay? Like, if you sex traffic someone who's 60, you're still violating the sex trafficking laws. So I have questions, and we'll have to see how this intersects with, whatever next legal developments take place. But I will say that at the bare minimum, I think this whole situation is going to make it very difficult for them to confirm him. We'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, you all know, like, all bets are off, but we'll see. Okay. So we had basket of deplorables was too kind. I just have to say that today. Like, I keep thinking back on that moment in 2016 where Hillary Clinton was essentially taken to the verbal woodshed for calling Trump supporters and his people a basket of deplorables. It was too kind. Okay. Here we had a whole series of nominees announced in the last 12 hours or so. Again, we have Linda McMahon being nominated to run the Department of Education with literally no experience of any kind, right? She is the currently separated wife from Vince McMahon of World Wrestling fame. And by the way, her husband is currently being investigated for sex trafficking. And there are very big questions about whether or not she played a role in that. So as I joked in my gallows humor last night on Blue Sky, there's always room for one more sex trafficker in the next Trump administration, apparently. We also had Dr. Oz nominated to run Medicare and Medicaid. Again, with no experience of any kind that would inform running what is perhaps the most important medical bureaucracy in America. Then just about an hour ago, we had Matt Whitaker, he of toilet bowl salesman, penile enhancement fame, nominated as the U.S. ambassador to NATO. I just, there are these moments where I think about, what it must be like to be, the Secretary General of the EU. Or, like any major NATO official, and see this coming and not feel like you're trapped in a horrible, I don't know, punked style reality show, right? Like, they're supposed to give these people legitimacy. Like, these people are supposed to know how to wield the incredible degree of power that they're being given. The one thing I have to say about this, we talked earlier in the week about the fact that I found this article about the fact that Trump's, you can go back and find it, but the fact that Trump's base kind of sees him as a reality TV star, and he, because of his pathology, psychopathology, has no inner life, like no relationship to narrate his own narrative or storytelling or anything like that. And so everything that he does is from the perspective of being like a TV star, right? So all he's trying to do is shock and put on a good show for people. And none of it is really about like actual legitimacy. That doesn't mean the people behind him aren't terrifying. And it doesn't mean he's not a fascist. But it just makes so plain why you would do things like this, right? And, I continue to have the same questions I was having yesterday and the day before, which is like, where the hell is JD Vance? Not that it matters, but we haven't seen him since the election. I know there are rumors that Usha Vance and her kids were playing at Mar-a-Lago the other day, but, like, he's gone, right? And it truly is just like a basket of deplorables, like lining up one after another for these incredibly powerful roles in government, where we have like literally no qualifications of any kind for any of these people for the roles for which they're nominated. And the one thing I will just say about this is one thing that we have to remember. And I'm very curious to see how this plays out, because reminder, all these people may not end up in the job that they've been nominated for. And I know a lot of people, by the way, on the Patreon feed were like, well, he'll just put him in acting positions. Well, he can't do that forever. So one of the things that I want people to remember here is that there are lifetime employees in every federal agency in the government. And while I know that Steve Bannon and, this military tribunal made up of civilians who are going to get like woke out of the government and out of the military is looming. Okay. There are people in lower level lifetime staffing positions, non-appointees, who actually know how all of this works in every agency, who are way more qualified, by the way, to be running one of these departments or agencies than any of the current nominees, who I just hope will like hang on for dear life, right? And try to keep things functional and working. Career civil servants are some of the most dedicated people in the nation, because they're there doing the work of government, and often we don't know their names, and they're not doing it for a huge amount of pay, and they're in these positions just trying to keep the government running. And I just hope they stay put. I mean, we know during the first Trump administration that, for instance, like the cybersecurity division of the Department of State was completely gutted, and that an enormous number of diplomatic staff were completely lost. Biden has managed to build a bunch of that back up. But at the same time, I don't know, man. I really hope that somebody who knows what they're doing stays behind. Because it's really scary stuff. And again, I have to remind you all, you can go back and watch yesterday's broadcast if you missed it, because I did talk at great length about the fact that we don't know what of all of these plans and what is being signaled is actually going to come to pass. We don't know the future. All right. We don't know that these nominees are going to be confirmed. We don't know that, they're going to survive the process of this. We don't know that the call for recess appointments is going to work. It appears right now it's not. And, we are going to have some flaming hot confirmation questions in the event that confirmations go forward. We'll have to see. I mean, I do find the election of John Thune still as Senate Majority Leader to be a very interesting tell, because he's not one of Trump's favorite people. So we will have to see how this all plays out, but I don't want anybody to panic. There were a lot of questions this morning about, like, I'm really worried about my kid who relies on Medicaid over on the Patreon feed. By the way, if you have questions, you can join us over there at patreon.com/resistancelive. One of the things that I want people to be aware of is that, like, we don't know how this is all going to play out. And I'm also going to point out that for people who are worried about things like Social Security, Medicare, other government services that you rely on, I think there's going to be an enormous pushback on cutting those in the event that actually really rises to the top of the realm of possibility. Because I just have to say this, there's a lot of, people representing states like Florida and Arizona who know that the vast majority of their constituents are people who are relying on Social Security for income, who are relying on Medicare for medical care. And I don't know. We'll have to see how this all goes. But the one thing I'm going to say, like, again, I have to remind you all, because I get some questions sometimes that are like, what should I do with my money? I can't advise you on what to do with your money. There are plenty of really good people out there who can advise you if you're a former federal government employee, if you have a pension, if you're on Social Security, who can advise you about all this sort of stuff. I can't do that. That is not my area of expertise. So I do want people to let's not freak out in anticipation of something that may not come to pass. And simultaneously, as I keep saying, be very aware of what they're threatening to do. All right. We have this wildly transphobic situation happening now in the House of Representatives, where Nancy Mace, as we discussed this briefly yesterday, and now apparently it's got like the full backing of the House GOP caucus, has essentially attacked Sarah McBride, our first elected incoming trans congressperson, and said that Sarah's not allowed to use the bathroom. Nancy Mace has now gone on this incredibly performative campaign of like tacking up the word biological over the women's restroom sign. I just can't with these people. You look at this and you've got a nominee for the Secretary of Defense who's credibly accused of rape, literally had somebody go to the hospital and have a rape kit done and reported him to the police, right? We have Matt Gaetz accused of sex trafficking and raping an underage teenage girl, okay? Then we have Donald Trump, adjudicated rapist, right? Adjudicated sexual assaulter, accused by more than 35 women of sexual assault, in for the presidency. We have Linda McMahon incoming with her husband, currently under investigation for sex trafficking boys. Nancy Mace is going to run around and claim that Sarah McBride, who, by the way, whose career I have followed from the very beginning, is one of the most effective politicians that I've ever kind of come across. She's incredibly good at her job. She's already like doubling down on doing great work for the people of Delaware, notwithstanding this attack. The fact that Nancy Mace is doing this is insane, and it's performative, and it's distraction, and it's stupid. And also like this desire to throw trans people under the bus on the Democratic side of the party because identity politics might have cost us the election is just as bad. Like I'm so sick of it, right? I'm just like so sick of it. And, you know, honestly, I know we're all calling our reps right now about HR 9495, which is the bill that is attempting to give the Treasury Department the ability to shut down nonprofits that are working for political aims, right? Like to help feed immigrants. Like really anyone the Treasury Department designates as a terrorist organization can be shut down by the government. We need it voted down. No question. But while you're calling your reps to talk about that, whether they're MAGA or not, you should also give them a piece of your mind about the stupidity of this performative nonsense about Sarah McBride in the women's bathroom. It's dumb. Like, it's dumb. And I'm just going to tell you something else, okay? Like, everybody I know uses a gender-neutral bathroom at home. Everybody who's ever flown on a plane has used a gender-neutral bathroom. This is stupid. It's dumb. And honestly, like, they should hear from us about this. All right. They should hear from us. And yes, I agree that Nancy Mace is a chaos agent and a narcissist, and she's doing all of this for attention. And simultaneously, they should know that we think it's bullshit. So call them and tell them that, and that you're tired of this nonsense, and they need to like get to work doing the business of the American people. Nobody gives a crap about the bathroom. I mean, it's so annoying and difficult, and it's pissing me off. Okay. We had some questions today about organizations to join, because you all know I've been talking about, like, very much on this broadcast since the election, about the importance of building community where you live. This is your reminder, by the way, that I'm going to put the banner up, that the Dual Power Accelerator starts a week from today. And that is our new 10-week training program on how to build community to disrupt and provide safety and provide survival for people where you live, and how to do it in a way that really creates a culture of service where you live so that people can be okay. All right. I'm so excited about this program, and like, you should totally join it. But one of the things that I will just add to that as well, and I'll drop a link up here when I'm done for that also. One of the things that I want people to be aware of here, though, also is that there may be organizations on the ground where you live that are already doing or starting some of this kind of work. All right. And the question, I think, came from somebody who was like, all the people who were like-minded have moved away. Should I join an old school, I don't know, Moose organization kind of thing? Right. Well, I'll tell you this. I think that being in community right now is important, but you have to be in community with like-minded people. All right. And small community is okay also. Like, being in community with 3 or 4 people who you can really trust is a really good idea right now. 3 or 4 people who are like-minded can make an enormous degree of change in a given community with the right intentions and the right plan. Okay. I'm going to remind you all, by the way, that like one of the places that Dual Power, you know, where this name comes from, because I've had some questions about this recently in light of the program, it comes from, for instance, the Black Panther Party gathering together in local communities to provide free breakfast to starving kids, right? To like provide free health clinics, to kind of try to remove the people who are already marginalized from the structures of oppression and get them what they need to survive, right? And small groups of people can do this. It doesn't take like an entire neighborhood coming together to make it happen. I mean, it's great if it will, but honestly, it takes just like a handful of people deciding that they're going to change the status quo. So, you know, again, I'm going to say, if you want to get involved where you live, you should look around at who's already doing the work. Look for like migrant support services organizations, LGBTQ support services organizations, your local Indivisible chapter, Red Wine and Blue, Moms Demand. There's so many great organizations that are already doing work around particular issues or broader things. Okay. But if that doesn't exist where you live, you can build it. And it doesn't have to be something like formal, right? It can be, I'm going to get together with 3 of my friends and we're going to decide what we're going to do as a volunteer activity this weekend. Are we going to show up at the food bank? Okay. Are we going to, you know, paper the neighborhood with information on how to procure free abortion services, right? Like, there's so many ways in which you can make a difference on this front. And, you know, the other thing I will just say here is that I do think there's a real benefit to being in communities of trust right now with people that you know you can trust, because some shenanigans are going to come down the pike on this, and you're going to need to know your people. Okay, so those are my recommendations on that. Okay, I did have some requests today. This is always a favorite question of mine for books. Okay, so for those, I'm getting out my little notebook here. For those who are in the Dual Power Accelerator, you're going to get a much longer resource list than what I'm about to give you. But I'm going to give these guys, everybody here, a couple of things that I think are like mandatory reading right now. All right. The first one is a book that I've been citing nonstop, and a lot of people have been citing nonstop since the election, which is On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. I think it is just probably something akin to the Bible of what we're going to need going into the next 4 years. And I want folks to understand that while we all keep quoting the first rule, which is do not capitulate in advance, as someone pointed out last night on Blue Sky, I can't remember who, there's also another really important rule. I mean, like all the rules are important, but rule 8 is also really important. And that rule is stand up. Okay. Do something that is going to make a difference to help people survive and to inspire people and give them hope. Okay. Because what you will find is if you have the courage to do that, other people will follow suit. All right. You can inspire, like, maybe it's only like 3 or 4 of you to begin with, but you might inspire your whole neighborhood to get involved. And the only way that happens is if you get involved, if you get willing to stand up and stand out, right? Which is hard to do. I'm going to say this, with the things that are coming and the way that they're terrifying us, which is part of the point. They want us scared, and therefore they want us to not do anything. But I'm also just going to say, Saeed Jones made a really valid point last night on Blue Sky, which is that the day after those Nazis marched in Columbus, a group of Black men protested fascist protesting in Columbus itself. And somebody said, Saeed was basically like, people need to do this. And some white person said, well, everybody else was too scared. And Saeed was like, do you think those Black men weren't scared? You think they weren't terrified? Like, of course they were. But they knew that, there's a point to doing it. And so I want to remind everybody, read On Tyranny, but also remember to take these ideas into yourself, okay? And figure out how you're going to live them. Okay, because the point of where we sit is that courageous people are needed. Great leaders are needed right now. People need to be willing to step up and take responsibility in their own communities for making sure that the worst shit doesn't go down, right? Or at the bare minimum, there's somebody there, as I keep saying, throwing sand and gravel in the gears whenever possible. Okay, so On Tyranny is at the top of my list. How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley, also mandatory reading. I can't even tell you. I feel like over the last 8 years, I've read that book 6 times. And there have been moments where I've picked it up off the nightstand and just flipped through a given chapter. The sexual panic chapter, by the way, is really important for what we're seeing in the context of transphobia, because it's a quality of how fascism gets a hold on people. Okay. Absolutely mandatory reading. Another book that I keep recommending, and that from an organizing perspective, I really consider to be kind of Organizing 101, is Mariam Kaba and Kelly Hayes' book, Let This Radicalize You. It's a book about essentially how we can become community agents of change. And I have never gotten all the way through it because every single thing that's in it, I now have 2 copies of it in my house, by the way, because I don't want to be without it. Every single time I get 3/4 of the way in it, I have so much information that I'm percolating on about what I can do and how I can support people and how I can step out in certain ways in my own community that I focus on doing that and then I come back to it. But it's so good. It's really critically important. 4th recommendation is Mutual Aid by Dean Spade. Those of you who were with me during the pandemic, remember that this little yellow book by Dean Spade, again, another great organizer, was sort of, again, our manual for getting through that time. And the book is written in the context of the COVID pandemic, but everything that's in it applies to where we are right now. It is essentially about how we build out networks of mutual support and aid in moments of crisis. Critically important book. Critically important book. It's little, tiny, and yellow, and you can get it. I think it's Haymarket Press. Please don't buy any of this stuff off of Amazon, by the way. Okay, another book that I strongly recommend, which is over here in my stack. Okay, I'm not going to lose everything. Whoop, there goes my book. Is Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. Again, very good spiritual book and also strategic book about organizing and how we can kind of use every skill set that we have to build out and organize at the current time. Okay. You can also buy my book, which is Becoming Heroines, which of course is also about how women in particular can rise to meet points of need for change and revolution. And I'll just say that the last book that I want to recommend is Rebecca Solnit's book, Hope in the Dark, which is a book that will sustain you, all right? Because it is a book about how at deep moments of crisis, people can leave aside division and come together for the greater good, all right? So those are my recommendations. Short list. Those of you in the program are going to get like other resources, also like articles and additional training recommendations, and like, you know, a few other things that are going to be out there. But that's my starter list for you guys today. And I'll just say that I've got a bunch of other things that are on my nightstand right now. And as I get through them, I will recommend them as well if they make sense. All right. Thank you for the compliment on my book, Mike. I appreciate that. So one kind of last thought that I just have today that I want to share with all of you. I think that, you know, the moment has come to kind of turn a corner here on all of this. I know that this is kind of where I've been leading, and a lot of the kind of less conventional broadcasts that we've done this week, which have been more about like, how do we keep moving? How do we sustain what we're doing? How do we make sure that we're creating networks of survival and now also service, right? Because that's really what it's about, is like, you know, organizing in your own community is organizing about how to serve, right? How to serve other people and how to make sure that you're getting what you need as well. I do think it's a moment to kind of turn the corner off shock and awe, with the understanding that, you know, I said this yesterday or earlier this week, the first few days of this administration, we're going to see some really horrific things. Like, again, I said yesterday, you've got to be emotionally steeled for the fact that they are going to round people up, right? And we don't know what that's going to look like yet, but we do know that, you know, some of the threats that they're making for like day one will be fulfilled in the first week, okay? This is a moment where we've got to stop letting them yank the chain of our emotional reactions, right? Which I think is the reason why I've moved on to gallows humor now. Because I'm tired of being horrified, right? What I'm more interested in now is strategy and how we're going to move through the coming days and weeks, no matter what they do, right? To make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep the people that we love and the people that we care about and the people in our own communities safe, right? We've got to be, you know, I mean, this kind of relates in some ways to like how you deal with like a narcissistic abuser who you can't completely separate from. You have to be, for the people that you love and care about, the point of stability. And it's hard, like it's really hard to not be triggered, especially when somebody's like up in your face, like poking you with stuff that's designed to get a reaction out of you, which is clearly, you know, what this is at scale. It's really hard to not get triggered. And at the same time, it's critically important for really vulnerable and marginalized people that like we show up as spaces of safety and building spaces of safety and with a commitment to serving the greater good, right? It's a way of saying like, okay, this may be insane over here, but I don't have to allow it to make me insane, right? I can be the person who stands in the breach of that and says, okay, over here is like a freaking hurricane, right? Wind, storm, noise, rain, like terror, okay? But over here, where I am, we've got you. I've got you. You've got me. We've got each other, right? Storm may howl over here, all sorts of nonsense and insanity. But over here, we're going to be okay because we're going to work together to do as much as we can to make sure people are okay. And everybody may not be okay, but we're damn sure going to fight for it, right? It's that kind of mentality. And that's an extension. You know, we talked so much about gray rocking here on the broadcast over the last 8 years. Oh my God. But like this is an extension of coping skills for people in your life who are narcissistic abusers, right? When you can't detach from them completely, because like, you know, no contact is always what's recommended in those intimate circumstances. It's really about like deciding that your peace will not be disturbed any more than you can help it, right? Your peace and the peace of the people that you love and care about and the peace of your community and your immediate circle will not be disturbed if you can help it. And the more that we sit in that space, the better we're all going to be, because we can sit in this space of recognizing that it's insane and that people are in jeopardy and are scared. But we can also say, over here, we're going to be rational. And what we know we can control is what happens in our own communities, in our own homes, right? Like, to the extent that we can, because we don't know what's coming, right? That we're going to do our very best to keep people safe and make sure people have what they need. So I really want folks to take a moment to think about, you can even do this as a visualization, right? What are the barriers that you're going to put up between the absolute raging hurricane of gaslighting, narcissistic abuse, and violence over here, and yourself and your own life and the people that you love? How are you going to think about keeping that over here in terms of your own mental headspace, and like what you're going to do in this space that belongs to you? All right. Because that in and of itself is a means of controlling outcomes, right? We don't have to be yanked left, right, and center, right? We have control over how we respond and what we do next. And I'll just say that in my own experience, the moment where you choose to not allow yourself to be yanked around like a dog on a chain by a narcissist, whether in an intimate relationship or at scale, is a moment where like you kind of get your sanity back. And then you get to make decisions about what you're going to do next. So I really do want to encourage everyone to kind of like take that turn away from shock and awe and more toward, okay, I'm here in this rational space in my own home, which is hopefully safe. I hope for all of you that it's safe. And these are the decisions that I'm going to make next to preserve my sanity, to preserve my safety, to preserve the safety and sanity of the people that I love, the safety and sanity of the people in my own community. These are the steps I'm going to take next. And I think that I hope for all of you, and humor helps, but I hope for all of you that you're able to do that. Okay. Because one thing I will just say on the Patreon feed right now is that, I do have moments where I worry about you guys. Because even after our conversation yesterday about how to emotionally regulate on this, like the whole feed was just like, I'm terrified, I'm terrified, I'm terrified, I'm terrified. We really don't know what's coming. And you can put the hurricane over here and be like, okay, here's the next decisions I'm making in my own life. All right. And let's not, I think the point, Melissa, is very well taken. Let's not waste our energy on what has not yet come to pass. Okay. Because apart from anything else, as I said yesterday, we all need to rest. All right. That's it for today, my friends. Lots of love to all of you. Reminder, please subscribe and like this broadcast. Don't forget to click that bell notification so you know every time I go live. And again, reminder, links below. You can join us in the Dual Power Accelerator starting a week from today. Registration closes a week from yesterday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So please join us if you have not yet done so. It's like, I will tell you again, I continue to be amazed by the people in this course, both the scholarships that we've given out and the people who have registered outright. This is an astonishingly great group of people. Some of you have been with me for 8 years. Some of you are brand new. And I'm like blown away by the quality of people in terms of like their organizing skill, the paths that they have walked, the commitments that they're making to build a better future. Like, I'm very, very impressed. And I would love to have as many of you in there as possible. All right. Lots of love, everyone. I will see you tomorrow. And just as a heads up, my plan right now is to take Friday and the weekend off. No progressive coffee hour for our Patreon members. I need a break. I hope you all understand, but I'm like doing my best to not burn out myself. I'm going to take Friday off for myself, because my kids are still going to be at school. And then I'm taking the weekend off to just like chill out and hopefully detach. All right. Jenny, if you want to sponsor someone for the course, please email our team at info@GaiaLeadershipProject.com. We do take scholarship donations, and that allows us to admit more people. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. I will catch you all here live tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye.